Hello, Esther.
Good.
I'm happy we can meet again, even in this way after 28 years. I don't believe that 28 years have passed by. It's like a second in our life.
And 28 years ago, it would not have been possible to meet like this. So it's good.
No, 28 years ago, when you came here to Rose 96 conference, you moderated that time a roundtable between Linus Torvalds, John Quarterman, and Juan Martinez Coll, a professor from Spain who was sustaining a project called EUMedNet. Linus was only 27 years old at that time, and JIT was not ever invented in that moment. Java was new, only 1 year, in 1990, because it was invented in 1995, and open source was not yet defined by Eric Raymond. It was only the free software, the Stallman invention, and John Postel was struggling to integrate IANA into a larger organization. I could talk with him in Prague, and he was very concerned about the huge amount of work he has to do. So after this, ICANN was settled 3 years later, after you came here. You involved very much in that period. What do you remember about that? About your visit here, about all this period, 96?
I remember interesting things about the hotels and just Bucharest itself, all these interesting people. It was very early days.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in Eastern Europe, the internet, in the West, it was kind of like a plaything and for science. But here it was in a world where the telephones didn't work that well and information was hard to get. It was
exactly
actually it was much more business-like. It was also not affordable for quote normal people. It wasn't for playing, and so you took it much more seriously, which was good.
Plus, very expensive.
Yeah, I said not affordable to.
It was a huge amount of money to pay for the internet in that moment.
Exactly. Well, I remember this was actually in Africa, but you did not have telephones at home, and so they used to have hair and telephone parlors, and then they added hair, telephone, internet.
Yeah,
because you would go to the hair parlor to use the internet or to use the phone.
And in that moment, you were not amazed to see Linus here in Romania and also John Quarterman and some others.
Well, it was where things were happening, and the whole idea of the internet was indeed that it could connect the world. So, and indeed it has, but with interesting consequences.
Our companies, I want to ask you, because this conference is organized by some ISPs, by the Association of Romanian ISPs, and also from ISOC Romania, which is a user part, Internet Society Romania. What is your perception about companies providing today the internet services, like ISPs, content delivery networks, and exchanges? To include also here the GSM and everything which makes possible the portability of Internet of Things, and all telemedicine, teleworking. What is your perception about?
My perception of them is, honestly, now the interest is much more towards a higher level. The interest now is towards a much higher layer, the content, the social networks.
Sure.
All the applications and content that moves across them. It's, it needs to work, but the actual connectivity is considered more of a commodity, fast or slow.
But it's very important, in a way.
It is very important, but people...
Nobody sees it, but it's very important. It's on the basis of everything.
Well, it's like the water supply. It's like the train system. It's fundamental, but it's not. It's a different business.
Okay. But I want to tell you something. Let's refer a little bit to the social networks.
Okay.
Facebook and this. I have 2,000 plugs for students in a place. Our company maintains this. And sometimes chatting on Facebook they don't realize that the internet is not working or the plug, the electricity is not working. And I have some scripts in their chat room to tell me what is the issue. And then they send me a SMS on an old telephone. Say, go and send the supervisor to start the power at the floor number 7. This is not bad because they don't realize where they are and how it's working.
Mm-hmm.
People from the social network, young people.
Yeah. I mean, this is the way the world works. People make things accessible, and then, quote, normal people don't really understand how they work. They don't know about plugging things in. They don't know about, you know, the reality is also they don't know about the security that keeps them secure or that does not keep them secure. They become susceptible to security breaches, to misinformation, to all kinds of stuff. And so, in a sense, in a world of social networks, in a world of misinformation, it's important to be much more aware of those kinds of breaches than of just the physical ones, and to reduce your vulnerability, not so much with VPNs, but kind of with common sense that says, does this make sense? Should I believe it? Who's sending it to me? And in a sense, you need to be aware both of your own motivations so that you're not manipulated by a social network, whether it's politically or to spend money you can't afford.
Huge discussions about this, yeah.
Yeah. And you also need to understand not just your own metabolism and how you get seduced, but you need to understand how these companies are focused on making money rather than delivering good content. Or, yeah, it's important to understand much less, quote, the motivations of AI, but the motivations of the people now using the AI to try and manipulate the people using all these amazing things that the internet brings to us.
What is your opinion about property on internet? Because in the past you were proprietary of your own data. Now it's not exactly the same because you have to use one of the 5 big platforms.
I think the notion of owning data is.
I refer here to Steve Berners-Lee project with the Solid, for example. Solid project.
I guess what I'm trying to say is something more different and more fundamental. You can't really own data. Once it's out, it's out. But what you've got is the ability to control it. I mean, NFTs in many ways have been sort of a failure, but the notion of a contract that's not I own or I don't own, but I have these rights, I assign these other rights, an NFT that would be updated with provenance information. It's more about the transparency in the contracts, which are complicated, than the simple notion of owning, because there can be 5 pieces of data which in themselves mean nothing, but when you put them together, suddenly they mean something. And so it's much more complicated than binary, I own it or I don't own it, because I perhaps delegate certain rights, control other rights, and we need better. It's like supply chain transparency. We need that around data.
What is your feeling about business generated by social networks, and how involved are you involved still in this?
How am I involved?
I like investor, of course. In this today.
Yeah.
In the past, I know.
I have some investments in various of these things. I had a fair amount of Facebook that I sold a few years ago near the top, I'm happy to say, or actually donated to my Wellville project, which is my full-time job right now. But I think most social networks have become, put it this way, they started out with very nice DNA, but they started out with very nice DNA, but their metabolism overtook their DNA. And so they're now run by this insatiable need for more money. So they manipulate their users in a way that makes the users regret using them. And that's what a bad decision is. It's not one that turned out badly, but it's one that you knew you shouldn't make, but you made it anyway, and it turned out badly.
Yeah, but this cannot be reversed easily.
No, but that still doesn't mean I should say it.
That's, yeah, things are going forward, not backward. Yeah.
And so the solution to that is much more educating people to be less vulnerable to these social networks, to have, you know, strong self-awareness, to be secure and not susceptible to being addicted, whether it's to social networks or to drugs or, you know, power, whatever. And these algorithms that the companies use, whether they're quote AI or just statistics, are very clever at discovering people's vulnerabilities and manipulating them and making money from their data, charging them for things they don't really want, sending them places they don't really want to go. It's something we need to, like a pandemic, we need to develop immunity to it rather than think we can eliminate it.
Oh. What about these new trends with OpenAI and ChatGPT and the usage of this? Because my guys are using intensely this.
Yeah,
to write some pieces of code and then to complete and to correct, and that's all. And
it's great stuff. And even as we use more AI, we need to train people how to use it, but we also need to train people to be better humans, not better users of computers. And that's, you know, that starts in childhood. It starts with good parents. It starts with, again, this self-awareness of what is it that makes me human? What am I vulnerable to? How can I make myself more likely to do what I want to do rather than be distracted by all this computer stuff around me?
Yeah, when I talk with young students and this, I explain them that artificial intelligence was in the 80s on the PDPs we are using, but now the data is larger and the speed and the quantity of data. So that's the main issue, and this is possible only through the internet.
Yeah, I mean, AI is, in a sense, it's what we don't quite understand yet. And it used to be just simple logic and statistics. And now it's much more emergent capabilities that one thing, so people live at a rate. The movie Her is one of the most wonderful movies because it's a man and an AI, and the man falls in love with the AI, and the AI has, I think, 1,500 lovers, and because she operates at a pace so far beyond the pace of the man, it's about a mismatch of timescales. And you know, he's much richer, he's a human, he's emotional, he's sentient, and she can just do a lot more in less time. But there's the biggest gulf between them is that time scale. And you're right, I mean, the AIs do stuff at tremendous speed, but they still, and you know, at some point, it's not that I don't think an electronic thing can somehow transform itself, but that's still going to take a while. We are still chemistry and biology, and we're just much slower, and at the same time much deeper.
Yeah. Those, including streaming, interactive TV, and others, reduce in a way the creativity of the users. I mean, if all the people look to the streaming and they don't do new things, don't develop new things, only maybe podcasts and influencers. But yeah,
I mean, this is one of the problems. What we need is community, and what so many of these social media are creating is audiences. And if someone in your audience disappears, you never notice. If someone in your community appears, a member of the community should notice. And in a sense, people need to love one another, but they also need to be loved and be needed. And to so much of what's happening now is I want an audience of numbers rather than a community of people.
Exactly. Because look, when Linus was here and he talked to the conference, I told him, go to the students, go to the Polytechnica and explain them what you have in your mind. And he explains them that he wants to invent more in the operating systems. Then he made the JIT. And after that, the time finished and he say, what I do now? I have to talk with them more. Go to the beer, to the restaurant, and we'll talk more. And they talked 2 hours more after the course. And it was excellent because those people who contacted directly Linus are now owners of some business here or developers. And it's very interesting because this contact is very, very important. You are right. And what amazed me is that you still think in the same way, but adapted to this time, today. That's very, very nice for you. Oh, are you still in contact with ICANN and this, more or less? No.
A little bit.
Can you tell us a little bit about ICANN, your involvement in the 90? I would like for the audience especially.
Okay, so the problem, ICANN was created in a very untransparent way. And as you know, right in the middle, it was the summer of 1998. In September, October, John Postel died.
I know. It's tragic. You know.
And so history would have been different had he stayed. I joined the board and then I became chair. Later on, Vint Cerf, who was really the proper person for that role, showed up. Sure. But instead of being the creation of John Postel, we were actually the creation of a bunch of lawyers working for the US and the EU governments who pretended they weren't there. The fiction was that the internet community wanted this thing, but honestly, it was really mostly the two governments, and then they brought in Japan and ultimately the rest of the world. But our first challenge was to eliminate the monopoly of network solutions. And that was quite difficult. We did not have enough of a budget. So it was a challenging time. Our board meetings were closed, which was really stupid. We finally opened them after one of our board members said, well, if you open the board meetings, we'll just make all the decisions at dinner the night before, which happened to be true, but certainly didn't help our public image. Anyway, the net of it was the purpose of ICANN was to create a vacuum or to protect the vacuum from government interference, from business interference, and basically not to do very much to make sure the underlying physical technology worked without messing with the content, and then sort of make sure that there was a good address system and a good namespace and so forth and so on. We did a very good job keeping the governments out. In the end, the thing ended up being really run. I mean, ICANN itself was mostly controlled by the business people, the registries and registrars, and the lawyers and the trademark people and the marketers. And because the challenge with government, whether it's on the internet or in the real world, is there are certain people to whom the rules and the power matters a lot. And they will come to the meetings because it's in their interest to do so. For most of the people, maximum they pay a few $100s a year in domain name fees. And so it's not worth their time, and they don't have the money. They have a real job to go to these ICANN meetings. So the governance is actually run by those who have a vested interest in the system, which is not really necessarily the vested interest of the large population of users. So ICANN has done, to be honest, a pretty bad job over the years of eliminating fraud and domain name usage and misdirection and stuff like that. It tried to sell .org.
I know.
You know, it's like selling your child. You know, you can't.
Yeah.
You provide a home for the child, but you do not own it. And so, I mean, and now we're dealing with much bigger problems around the content, which sort of is another level above where ICANN sits, which is more the sort of identity connectivity. But it shows the difficulties of governance, which is getting the voice of the broad public listened to. And I mean, this is a huge challenge in the world right now that we're all talking about, but fundamentally, you want normal people to be represented the way they are on a jury, where people feel a real duty to understand the truth and vote because they feel their vote counts. When you're one of hundreds of millions of internet users, your vote doesn't count. That's the reality of it. So we're facing this challenge in governance much more broadly than just with ICANN, but ICANN is certainly a very useful story about, you know, both the good and the bad of trying to set something up, and then how do you make it actually represent the public? We had the at-large advisory councils, but it's challenging.
It's challenging, yeah. It's challenging. This is not important. Important is to communicate. And I was very much involved in the 90s in this sharing of people and communicating with the government and then with the organizations and the work, and everything grew. Then I went to a company and I retreated. I disappeared here at the ninth floor of an eight floors building. And now I say I have to involve again a little bit to make some links because the links disappeared.
Mhm.
I want to explain our initiative. That's why, and I use this because that one in 17th of May was done at the commemoration of the anniversary of ITU.
Mhm.
And you know that ITU and the SOC and the CAN, there were some discussions and some challenges here. And why to celebrate internet in the ITU day? Why don't to celebrate separately in a special event dedicated from ISPs and to ISOC Romania? And that's why we did this, to make another way this event. What do you think about this?
I think that's terrific. And I think I mean, I'm sorry I'm not there with you physically. Ironically, I'm talking with you from the office of Amy Gall, who is a Romanian born entrepreneur who now has a company here in the US called Ezra. So I should, but he's not.
I wrote to Van Cerf and to Sadovsky and told them about our plan. And they say, this is a 3 days conference. No, it's only 1 day. It's the first one. And they immediately helped us.
Good.
Van Cerf sent registered talk, and Sadovsky also made some recommendations. And we succeeded to invite here also Paul Vixie. Paul Vixie will speak live to the audience, and he will get some questions, hopefully, about secure DNS and everything.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but at least I'm in a sort of Romanian territory here in New York City.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very happy that we could talk. I will send you the link to our conversation. I will introduce you completely during the challenges of internet session. Paul Dixie will come probably after you. And we have some others like Mike Carroll's here, who invented the BSD, you know, the guy who worked to BSD and free BSD after Bill Joy when he left to Sun, and and he will be here, and will I prepared the session with the students at Polytechnica for this, but this is a separate task. I will let you know all these details.
Okay, great. And feel free to edit stuff where I repeat myself or whatever.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for this. And maybe next time you'll come.
Okay. Mulțumesc.
I hope you recognize me, no?
Yes. Mulțumesc.
Okay. Bye.